And now we're going to move on to our one general business item. And this was the item that we were going to move upstairs and have a study session, but I think it's very appropriate for us to do it down here, so A, you don't have to shuffle up there, and B, there was a lot of technical difficulties in having two meetings where we'd all have to sit around for an hour in between. So first I'm going to start off by reading you what the rule actually says. So this is rule number 9, section 3, currently called public recognition, which is kind of misleading because when people come up and comment on like an agenda item or general business or zoning issue, that's called public comment. And so a lot of people, me included, get these terms misplaced. So number one, I want to find a new name for it instead of calling it public recognition. And so all of this discussion that we're having tonight, we are hoping that the public writes in letters to us with their comments of what they think we should and shouldn't do. Because, well, after I read this section to you, which I don't have the whole thing, it's about 5 pages long, so I'm hoping that a lot of you are looking at this online where we have it on our agenda bill. But basically, we have in place rules that are extremely difficult to enforce. We ask that people be respectful. We can't enforce that you're respectful. We get a lot of comments from people who watch our meetings and say that they'll never come in person because of the way they're hearing things, either via Zoom or comments that some people are making in the audience. So we're really hoping that if and when we change these rules, that people remember that and either take care of it yourself, that you're not acting in that way, or remind other people that we have to maintain a little bit of decorum. Because any changes that we do make, and I'm sure most of you who are in here have witnessed some of the really awful Zoom calls that we've gotten, and people are under the impression that I can stop them or that our IT staff can stop them. If we're under the state law, if we're allowing anybody in the actual audience here to speak, we have to allow Zoom comments to come in. And they changed that law. The intention was for people that were housebound or didn't have a vehicle or were rushing home from work would have the opportunity to speak at a public meeting. But what it's turned into by some is a way to run their political agenda by coming in and saying nasty things about different religions or people's sexual identity or people's race. And once people start talking, I can't stop them. So you got to keep that in mind. So when you're commenting, we've also put up the ACLU's rules on our website for their interpretation of the state of Washington's rules for for comments at public meetings. And they're different than what other states. A lot of people have sent us letters calling out what the state of California allows. Washington does not allow the same thing that the state of California. We're different than the state of Missouri. So please, before you write us a letter, review those because it might answer some of your questions. So my main focus tonight is to hear from all of the council members who are present what their suggestions of how we should function with public comment. And those would be things that aren't on the agenda or are not a business matter. And we're not talking about the consent agenda or if we have a public hearing. It's strictly it used to be at the very beginning of the meeting where people could come up and the intent was to talk about concerns they have with the city itself, like if they have a problem getting a permit or if there's potholes in their road or that sort of thing, and it's kind of devolved. So I want to go around the dais and see what everybody's thoughts are on suggestions, because we're going to continue our discussion next week at our study session. But the reason we're doing this tonight is to give the public the opportunity to write us with their suggestions of how they would like us to either change or go back to the way it was, or how we can modify it. So can we start with our Council Vice President with your comments?
First of all, I think it's good that we're doing this, and I'm sorry it's taken so long, but in some ways it hasn't taken that long. It's an important process to go through for us to make sure to balance the needs of everybody involved. We need to bring back the public's ability to address the council here in chambers. And so as far as public, I feel strongly about that. I believe that they should have that access here in person. And I think there are some ways that we can moderate that, the timing of it, where it happens on the agenda. When I first came into council, one of the first things that we did was we moved it to the front of the agenda. It was at the back of the agenda or near the end of the meeting. And we decided we were so concerned and wanting to hear from the public, and so we moved it to the very beginning of the meeting. So that's one thing that we could look at. Should we move it back to after we conduct business, and then we hear from things that are not business related or agenda related? So I'd be supportive of entertaining something like that. And then the time limits. I used to be a public speaker. That's what I did in the social service sector. I did educational programs, and 3 minutes is a long time. And so I think that limiting that time as well, and we've talked about this, some have said 2 minutes, some have said, 90 seconds. I'm more comfortable with 90 seconds just because, again, I'm familiar with how long that 3 minutes is. And you can actually make your point very sufficiently about just about anything in 90 seconds. So things like that, ways like that, I'd like to zero in as a council and make those decisions so that we can engage with our public once again. I do miss that, believe it or not. I do miss it, and I think it's an important part of our responsibility. So that's kind of where I am tonight about it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Camerata, do you have any?
We're just going down the line?
Yeah, we're just going down the line. Sorry.
I don't have a difference of opinion between what we had talked about with the public comment section. And again, just as a reminder, that is when we have an agenda item or something that is on the agenda that can be discussed. The suggestion that I had last week when we were talking about that at study session was 90 seconds. And I loved Councilmember Goodnell's suggestion that we should think of that as a starting point of that 90 seconds and see how that feels. If it's, if people aren't able to get their point across and all of that, it's not set in stone. So I absolutely love that suggestion from last week. And I'm saying it only because we read this, but that came from you. And personally, I don't believe that there should be a difference in how we do public comment versus how we do public recognition. My opinion would be the same for those two, so I don't have any suggestions that are anything different. As far as the calling it public recognition, I do like the possible name change to that, because even then I thought we were recognizing the public for something, not allowing the public to speak. And so that was kind of confusing. So if we can change the name, I'm all for it, but I have no suggestions right now.
Okay.
I just found out we can do that. I was like, yeah, that's a terrible name. So,
Councilman Goodnow, do you have any?
Yeah,
Thing
so
to share?
I don't know if you mentioned in your opening intro to this, but it is absolutely not required. So it, but that being said, I think we all enjoy hearing from folks directly, and I think we've missed not having it. But on the flip side, it can be very disruptive. It can really throw off your mindset. It's a business meeting, and it can really kind of, put I don't know, sand in the gears of what we're hoping is going to work. So I think for me, maybe big picture is about 50% of my time here. It was at the beginning, and 50% of my time we had it towards the end of the meeting. And the real reason it was moved was just out of respect for residents. So some of these meetings go, as you may know, till 10 p.m. And that can be, if you just want to say like, hey, we're having a bake sale, that's a big commitment. Something else that we haven't talked about a whole lot, but I'd be open to also is maybe it'd always be the first Wednesday of the month where there's sort of this sort of open town hall, sort of, come to the mic and speak. But I would definitely like to see it back, as it was mentioned. I'd like to maybe ease back into it so the 90 seconds feels pretty comfortable. And you're coming and making. Again, you're not commenting on anything going on. It is about city business. It is city business that our open mic night is for city business. And you're coming there, and if you get your thoughts together and say, my concern is this, and then maybe amplify a little bit. I think there's plenty of time there. And it's really to get something in front of us. We're not going to have a discussion with you at that time. Hopefully we'll set up a meeting. I can't tell you how many times that the chair has said, can you please make sure before you leave tonight we have your contact information? Or literally, I've seen maybe the mayor walk over and talk to somebody, or grab a department head and take somebody over to somebody. So we want to hear, there's just times that you want to be heard, and we want to hear that. So I want us to have this, and I want us to come together as a community and make it work. So I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Tiff.
Okay, I agree that we need an opportunity for the public to speak to the council. With that said, I also want to make comment that the written comments that have come in have been very valuable to me, because those written comments have been well thought out. The commenters had an opportunity to put their thoughts together, and I think that I know myself, and I'm sure all of our council members do read those letters. So the written comment process that we've had in place now since I joined the council in January have worked well. With regard to the time, I'm more on the end of 2 minutes, but 90 seconds would be fine, as long as we have the opportunity to adjust it if it isn't working out. I'd also like to see, I guess, a little bit of structure. So when you walk in, if you'd like to speak to the council, that there's like a roster you sign, so that council president can say, okay, next we'd like to hear from so-and-so, and so that there's some order and and process rather than just lining up. So I'm not sure how well that would work, but I think that would bring some order to the evening. As far as distinguishing between agenda items, I was on the Planning Commission, and we distinguished between just basically comments that did not pertain to an item on the agenda as opposed to comments directly related to an agenda item. So I think there's some merit to that because it is about city business. So if we have a citizen that would like to comment on, if we were doing something with the stormwater plan, that they would keep their comments appropriate or applicable to that agenda item, because that's what we want to hear about. And then separately, of course, just the open comments from the floor. And I too, similar to Council Member Camarada, when I first heard the name public recognition, I thought it was, gee, I want to give a shout out to the Boy Scouts, recognizing good things in the public that the council ought to hear about. We get that from the mayor oftentimes, but there may be some really important things in our neighborhoods that, we ought to be aware of. So I guess the bottom line is we've heard in many letters that the public would like a chance to speak directly to us. So I'm in favor of somehow returning that opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Goodnow has some other comments.
Yeah, I'm glad Councilmember Tift brought up the roster, because I would like to also have something in place where the chair, you would, whether it's for an item or for a public, could have, there'd be a roster so that maybe due to subject matter, maybe could grant everybody on one, if we're talking public recognition, possibly a little extra time, or if there's a large number of folks, we might, maybe the chair could bring it down. But it would really help to manage that. We often have more than 10 folks speak. And if you're giving folks 3 minutes, that's already a half hour, and easily you could have 20 people speak in an evening. So we just want to be respectful of everybody's time, and we want to hear the message. And if the time being shorter helps for somebody to come up with a succinct message to get across. And again, it's hopefully starting a conversation. So I just wanted to add that I did support the idea of a roster, and then the chair can use that to call folks up, and can also use it to work in the online folks waiting.
So I want to comment on your comment. We could have a roster, but we can't require a roster. So, and then sometimes when you're sitting in the audience and you hear somebody say something about an issue, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I disagree, or I have another thought on it. So I think for actual business items or things that are on the specific agenda, that might make sense, especially if it's 90 seconds and it's a business item. Start off with yes or no, and then your why. Because if you only have 90 seconds, you might not be able to get to your yes or no, and then it's easier for us to keep track of everybody's opinion out there. We've had suggestions of having people register, where they live and all that. I mean, I hope that we get comments from people who live in the city of Bremerton. I mean, I've lived through meetings where people from the city of Bainbridge Island call us and tell us what they think we should be doing, and I kind of roll my eyes at them. I mean, maybe they have some good thoughts, but really, this is the city of Bremerton, and we are your representatives. We're not representatives of people who live in the county or people who live in Port Orchard, and And I'm not saying that they can't state their opinion, but our main goal is to help people who live in Bremerton itself. I'm very much into no more than 90 seconds to start. I still want to make sure people know that as soon as we open this up again, it'll be a mini version of what happened on January 7th, where for 9 minutes we had to listen to somebody spout out racist, vile things for 9 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes at a time, but you know, at least now it would be down to half that amount of time, because people like to do that, because if we do shut them off, then they can turn around and sue the city, and people make a living off of doing things like that. So I'm really looking forward to people in Bremerton sending us letters telling us if they have a better name to call instead of open mic, which is kind of how we refer to it sometimes, because that really is what it is. You know, you can talk about any subject, but we're hoping you're talking about subject matter specific to the city of Bremerton. And then I wanted to make sure people were aware that if you're trying to complain about a staff member or a council member, there is an official way to do that. And nobody from HR is sitting listening to these meetings. So if you have an issue with a staff member, you can send it an email and get forwarded to HR, and they will review it. If you have a problem with a council member, you can send it to our council office, and our office manager will review it with myself and the council vice president, and we'll see if we should move it forward, if it's got merit, and then we will bring it to the rest of the council and say, you know, we got this complaint, and this is what the person's asking for, and we get their opinion. So please send us letters about names for open mic, anything about public comment, which is everything besides open mic. And then if you have different comments on how we should address what has been called public recognition. If you think it's at the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting, at the end of general business, before we do our council reports. But I know you all want to sit and listen to them. But, you know, but let us know how you want us to do it, and please respect the ACLU's guidance on what the state laws of Washington are for commenting at a public meeting. Is there anybody else on the dais who wants to make a comment? Councilman Tiff.
This is Councilman Tift. The written comments, I just want to, again, highlight those that have been very valuable. So that is a good opportunity to reach us when we're not sitting up here. And as I indicated, they're great. Frankly, I've found them to be very certain. I don't keep using the right word, but they've been important for me in understanding issues that come from the public. So please don't stop sending those in on particular agenda items for the city.
So the agenda is published typically Friday afternoon. Sometimes we do have to amend it, but normally we don't amend it with a new big item. That would just be like an emergency item if it was something major. Moving things around on the agenda, yeah, that's going to happen. So if you can get us your comments by Tuesday afternoon, if you want us to consider them at our next meeting. So we do study sessions the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month, and we do council business meetings on the first and third Wednesday of the month. So consider Tuesday at noon deadline if you want to make sure we see them, because they have to process them. A lot of times we don't get emails for 24 hours sometimes. So does anybody else in council have any other comments? things to consider. Okay, well, just as a reminder, we will be coming back to the March 25th study session for further discussion in combination with the consensus we reached on public comment from last week's study session. And this concludes tonight's regular council business. Meeting is adjourned.